Hello viewers, this is Ousama Khan in program State Affairs. Today we will talk about the enormous challenges and the enormous problems being faced by the European Union. We have witnessed that back in 2015, the European Union has witnessed the biggest blow as the Brexit happened, and eventually it is getting matured day by day. But today what we are focusing is on the European major crisis, and it's all about the migrant crisis. The people coming from all over the world to the European Union, and eventually the European Union the social fabric of the European Union is in the demise. And categorically on Thursday, like by tomorrow, the European leaders are going to be gathered to sort out all the problems regarding to the migrant crisis. Well, the hardened Eurosceptics might love to think that the EU is in trouble, but as the leaders gathered in Brussels for their summer summit on Thursday, I've just said that they actually dedicated Europhiles who are very sounding the alarm and will be very happy on this move. Well, the fragility of the EU is increasing. The cracks are growing in size. It's been very easy to get distracted this last couple of weeks by the new Italian government and its headline-grabbing rejection of the NGO migrant rescue boats. That was the big blow to the European Union. That was the biggest blow to the European norms. The EU fissures go deeper and are more widespread actually. Viewers, migration pits southern Europe against the north. So it's a divide between the southern and the north. They are having a rift on the migrant issues. Literally from the Italy and Greece, they are smoldering with the resentment at having been left alone to deal with the migrants' arrival. Meanwhile, the northern countries blame the south for not patrolling their Mediterranean borders better and for having, at least in the past, enabled migrants to slip away northwards towards the richer Germany, Austria and Sweden. Viewers, the migration slashes the EU from east to west too. So it's a very big problem for the whole European Union because it's a four dimension from east to west, from north to south. There is a major fault line which is a migrant issue, and it's coming up for the European Union. The newer member states from Central and Eastern Europe never signed up to the post-World War II all for one and one for all vision. But when it comes to the European Union solidarity and the burden sharing, they are fervent non-believers. They determined that they turned their backs when Italy and Germany plead for the migrant quotas. Now, that's a very interesting and intriguing thing. The number of migrants arriving illegally in Europe may be down, but so is voter tolerate the problem. The rise across the European Union of tough on migration politicians has been emboldened highliners, like they are the hardliners, such as the Hungary Viktor's Orbán and Austria's Sebastian Kurz, who takes over the 6 months rotating presidency of the European Union, and this Sunday they will start again the migration as a top priority. Now, keeping them out is Australia's main aim, and while Europe's still most influential leader, Angela Merkel, we all know that she actually arrives today in Brussels for the summit which is going to be held tomorrow. And what they are actually pushing and praying for the compromise on the burden sharing and the prevention, and the number of European Union leaders which are eventually pushing single-mindedly on the migrant deterrence button because it is growing day by day. And let me tell you a very interesting thing, that Mrs. Merkel has clearly been weakened at home by her previous open-door migrant policy. She gained a very massive support in her last election, but eventually the tables have been turned. Formerly viewed as the politically untouchable, the German Chancellor has now been given an ultimatum by her own interior minister. His interior minister eventually said that by the end of this Brussels summit, you need to come home with a workable pan-European solution to stop irregular migrants bleeding into Germany. The interior minister, whose name is Horst Seehofer, has threatened her, and he said that categorically, or I will unilaterally slam Germany's borders shut. Now, that's a very big call against the Merkel. Even the Austrian government told that this week it would then immediately follow the suit, causing a closed border, and it will be impacting a dominoes effect across the Europe within the symmetric impact of the European Union's price, political and economic projects. So, the open border Schengen agreement. What a blow for Brussels and nightmare for the Europe's export king Germany that would be. We have to see how the things will be going around. Now, if we push for the migrant centers, like what will be the way forward, we must have to look for the way forward. If we push for the migrant centers outside the European Union, then what? In true European Union style, once gathered round a table here in Brussels, there will be undoubtedly be emphasized on what unites rather than divides member countries. On migration, European Union will easily agree to beef up their Frontex border guards. There's also growing convergence around the idea of setting up so-called disembarkation centers outside the European Union to identify economic migrants, as I've said that. But that's only in the theory. Who will send them back to the home, or who will send them back to that European centers? Those with the right to asylum or refugee status could then be only given safe and legal passage to Europe. But again, that's a very optimistic approach. What will be happen on the generally on the ground realities? And there's much talk, let me tell you, that there's much talk of closer cooperation with migrant countries of origin and the transit countries, and that migrants cross to make their way to people's smuggler boats. But again, I'm very pessimistic about that. These ideas are easier to formulate than to carry out. You would need a lot of European Union border guards to truly patrol southern Europe's thousands of miles of open coastline. You would need permission from African countries such as Niger and Chad to set up processing centers. So far, that's a distant goal. Well, in the meantime, there is no whiff of European Union agreement over what to do with the migrants, how to reach Europe, which brings us back to threat to the Schengen. Now, it's a very big threat to the Schengen, and if the social fabric of the Schengen get lost, eventually it will be the demise of the European Union. Overall, we have seen that in the Brexit, the UK has been gone. So, who have took eventually the leadership? The gloomy German government, and they have eventually been projected that there are 3 out of 10 chances of survival, again thanks to the increasingly nationalistic nature of the many European governments. And if Schengen goes fail, that's my prediction, that would be the beginning of the end of the European Union. It's too early really to herald the demise of the European Union or even the end of the Miss Merkel career in the government as a result of this political migrant crisis in the Europe. But as European Union summit host Donald Tusk said to the European Union leaders on the eve of their arrival, that the stakes are very high and time is really, really short. Well, let's discuss now categorically the figures, then we'll analyze that why Italy is showing such behavior. So, the migrants' arrival, let me tell you, from Mediterranean in 2018, let me tell you that the Spain actually received 9,315, Italy has received 14,330, the Greece has received 11,763 migrants, and Italy has overflowing migrant centers, and those who managed to slip away from them have sought refuges in the abandoned homes. Many migrants even don't want to be in Italy at all. Why? What's the reason behind that? My rational thinking thinks that what's the basic reason behind that? So, their goal is the richer north of the Europe, but France and Austria, but eventually they have blocked their path by keeping their borders with Italy firmly shut, while elsewhere along the Mediterranean coastline, France, Spain and Malta have purposely looked the other way. They claim that Italy's powerful new interior minister is going to be making the trouble for them. Now, this ended up as the refugee camp of the Europe. And before you dismiss Matteo Salvini as an ultra-rightist, anti-European Union troublemaker and admirer-in-chief of President Donald Trump's brash and brutal style of politics, all allegations with quite some truth to them, consider this, that it was the center-left government of normally mild-mannered former Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni that first threatened to close Italy's port to migrant rescue vessel not licensed by the Italian authorities. The bottom line, as Italy knows too well, is that there is a screaming absence in European Union policy when it comes to a coherent, united and functioning plan to deal with irregular migration in the short and the medium term. So overall, we have to see that what would be the way forward. We'll look into the way forward after the short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. As we were discussing that the European leaders are very pessimistic about the whole migration crisis, and they are very in the faltering and fumbling position to tackle now the big migrant crisis. They were very satisfied back in 2015 as they have sorted down about the migrant crisis. They have invested billions of dollars on the migrants, and they have eventually pulled themselves out of the migrant crisis. If you remember the Brussels, the shaky deal with the Turkey and all the stuff, what really made the difference was the unilateral decision by the Austria's audacious foreign ministry Sebastian Kurz, who is eventually now a prime minister, to orchestrate the closure of the migrants route through Europe to their target countries in the richer north. Now, the fast forward 3 years, and once again without Brussels and outside the European Union framework, the Interior Minister of Austria, the country that currently holds the rotating EU presidency, Germany and Italy have announced they are forming their own axis of cooperation on security and the migration. Meanwhile, the Australian and the Danish prime ministers have been discussing their preferred plan to set up the camps for processing asylum seekers outside the European Union. Now, the idea of external processing camps is not new, of course. Even the President Macron of France has spoken in the favor of them in the past and many times. Now, the whole leadership is eventually putting their mile efforts into this European crisis. Similar models even much criticized by the NGOs and human rights campaigners and are employed by the United States of America and Australia. But as a result of Italy's antics this week, European leaders are being spurred into action or not at least considering it far more seriously. As a decision-making bloc, the European Union is famous for only ever making dramatic moves where proverbial backs are well and truly against the wall. That, for example, is why the European Union leaders, despite all their promises and handwriting during the height of the euro crisis, are now, with the currency currently in a much happier state, dragging their feet over reforms. And so it is with the irregular migration. European Union leadership, the whole leaders, were happy to forget the crisis post the 2015 flood, leaving the frontline Mediterranean countries to mop up rest of the mess. So, if you want to call me cynical, you may call me. But I have noticed a fair few politically expedient elements colliding this week. Even the current European Commission team, headed by the Jean-Claude Juncker, is coming to the end of its mandate and considering its legacy. The migrant crisis has made a mockery of EU unity these past years and fueled the popularity of the anti-EU nationalistic sentiments in the many corners of the continent, not least in the Italy, a founding European Union country, and not long ago one of the bloc's most enthusiastic the member. It was the now they are behaving like it's the most outrageous player in the European Union. Now the Brussels was preparing to work with the Eurosceptic politicians, helping them with the issues like migration, as long as they refrain from the comforting EU institutions by messing with the Eurozone regulations as they had previously threatened. Me watching this week's posturing by the Italian government using the lives of migrants as the political footballs, yet escaping censure from the power that be in the Brussels, I am wondering if they received in a nod, however imperceptible, to take this action in order perhaps to alert the rest of the Europe to the crisis, for the ostriches to take their heads out of the sands, as Spain's Prime Minister has put it, and finally coordinate coherent responsibility taken pan-European migration policies that would suit Brussels as well as Italy. Would it not? Obviously it would. It would suit EU linchpin Germany too. Angela Merkel has been at the loggerheads with her tough on the migration interior minister. Horst Schäfer this week even they have the major fault line among the Europe. Even she is more than EU leaders has been politically burned by the Europeans' asymmetric attitude to irregular migrations. And after the Aquarius debacle, as we have seen, they turned down the whole ship of the migrants. It is a very assured of a front and center spot at a summit of EU leaders by tomorrow, and even now no common European solution is found. Angela Merkel has warned the foundation of the European Union will be called into question, but all we have to see that by tomorrow, when there will be a summit of the European Union leaders, will they chart out one single policy for all the Europeans who will get agreed on the table, and will they sort out like they have sorted out back in 2015, although the regulations they have amended them, although the basic fabric of the European Union has the policy to take all the migrants, whoever is coming to the European Union, into the European Union, but they have amended the rules, some shut down their borders. We have to see what will happen, who will be on board by tomorrow. We'll have to see in their summit. After that summit, we will again analyze the whole situation. By then, just take care of yourself. Have a very nice weekend. Just take care of yourself. Goodbye.